Imperial Lounge presents and I call
Reggae Dancehall by the beach. To be held at Imperial Lounge, 2 to 14 High Street, Margate Seafront, Kent, CT9 180. To be held on the first Saturday of each month. Your host DJ Matt. Also rotated DJs, Roddy Boone, DJ Happy,
and Younger General.
Doors open 8 p.m. till late. Free entry all night. Music policy, reggae, dancehall, and a touch of soul. On the first Saturday of each month. Reggae dancehall by the beach. At the Imperial Lounge Margate. Do remember you can also get VIP and Shisha booking. More info on the World Jam Global website. That's www.worldjamglobal.com. Also www.imperialloungemargate.co.uk. See you there.
It's the right thing you doing. Rebellious like Malcolm. 1, 2, 3, swing it.
Do you have an old sound tape or your favorite cassette tape that you want converted to CD or MP3 format? Do you need a demo CD, radio ad, a DJ or even a sound system for your wedding, birthday or special occasion? Then why not get in contact with KTR Records on 07931 152 448 or check out our website on www.ktrrecords.com. We have been in business since 2004 and also undertake community projects. So for your remixes, dubplates and all your sound editing needs, why not contact KTR Records, official sponsor of World Jam Global Radio. KTR Records, coming your way. Do you like music like this?
Great music all the time.
Or like this?
The music you love.
Maybe this.
Great music that makes you want to turn up the volume loud.
Or life track like this.
Especially where human life is concerned. Surely, sooner or later, people will realize that lives actually matter.
Then you're in the right place. Keep it locked to World Jam Global, where music is harmony.
Music 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah, you're my World Jam. Hotter than them.
See live schedule.
You see, it's here. You see. New feature coming from World Jam Global Radio in 2018. World Jam Global Top 10. To vote for your favorite artist, go to twitter.com/WorldJamGlobal or facebook.com/WorldJamGlobal. So pick the right track where you want to have in your car, at your house, a rock. At them.
Already did my time, I paid for my crime. Already did my time, I paid for my crime.
I want to say it's another big good evening going out for me. Kevin Julian on World Jam Global Radio's Issues Today.
I paid for my crime. Already did my time, I paid for my
In just a few moments we got another live exclusive interview.
time.
And our guest Lisa Finch has got a story to tell.
Back in the day, I didn't really care about the system. It was all about survival.
Don't worry about me, I'm currently
I had too many rights.
sharing this stream live across the world as we speak.
School, I learned my lessons in the streets. There was not a man I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands and very quick on my feet. I was swimming in.
In just a few moments I'll tell you exactly where you can find us.
I was getting money, life was so sweet. Now things have changed, the whole game has been rearranged. I'm a changed man, don't need no gun in my hand. It ain't about being no gangster, life is too short to spend it all in jail.
Okay, I'm all yours.
Living hell, already
Just a few minutes past the hour, 6 o'clock UK time. I do believe our clocks have gone back last week, and across the pond, your clocks are going to be going back tonight after midnight. So there's been a slight cross time difference.
already did my
It
time.
makes no difference, we're here now.
Already did my time. I paid
I want to say hello to Sandra Dawn, Julie Cross, Paula Crane,
I was a drug dealer, so
Donna Chizezi and Marie Grant, in particular.
Proud of what I had to do. That's why I'm telling my story to you and you. I had to repent. I must admit, I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now sit back and think it over since I've gotten older. The life I used to live, I wouldn't do it again. I was young and dumb, my brain was so numb. I was a real Forrest Gump, but I was nobody's chump. Me and Billy the Kid had a lot in common. I was the real Terminator, much meaner than Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'd chew you up and spit you out like a real alligator.
This week we venture into the world of swatting. That's where someone makes a hoax 911 call and moments later an innocent person is killed. Lisa Finch is my guest this week, speaking about and sharing the loss of her son Andrew Finch, shot dead by cops responding to a hoax call. Who's to blame? The individual making the call? The cops that killed him? Or both? We ask those questions today and we look at all the information and data available. Hear the heart-wrenching pain of a mother and express some truth and opinions on a difficult, new trending killing license that cops can't get right.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time.
You can get us live on www.worldjamglobalradio.com.
So I can get
we are a live internet radio station and we're going out on social media platforms right across the world. You can find us on Facebook Live. You can find us on World Jam Global Radio. You can find us on Issues Today. And you can also find me, Kervin Julian. And you can also find us on every police brutality, killed by cops, wrongful conviction sites that you may find on social media.
My hand, it ain't about being no gangster. Life is too short to spend it all in jail. Trying to cope with this living hell.
I remember doing a show on swatting about 3 years ago where we covered the story of John Crawford Jr.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Young black man on the phone to his girlfriend in Walmart supermarket in Cleveland, Ohio.
Already
a particular state where you have a license to carry.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
On that occasion, an evil, wicked man made a false hoax call to 911 claiming that there was a black man waving a gun in a shopping aisle in front of mothers and children. And within 3.2 seconds of the officers arriving on scene, John Crawford was dead. Today we look at another story, the life of Andrew Finch.
But I was nobody's chump.
A son, a husband, a father, a hard-working individual
I'd chew you up and spit you out like a real alligator,
whose life was cut short.
Already did my time.
Stand by for an explosive, emotional interview with Lisa Finch.
I paid for my crime. Already did my time.
The opening statements are going on right now. He could be facing life in prison.
Bearing in mind there are some real conflicting information and evidence.
Trying to cope with this living here.
And we take a very close look at the officer who fired the fatal shots that killed an innocent man.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Pay for my crime, pay for my crime, pay for my crime, pay for my crime, pay for my crime. All those drive-by killings, stop them. It ain't about nothing. He who was out sin, let him cast the first stone. I'm trying to get this felony off my back so I can get my life on track and have the right to vote and live like an ordinary citizen again. This is my message to all of my friends in the pen, statewide, worldwide, and put down those knives. Stop stabbing each other. Yeah.
In just a few moments, we're going to have Lisa Finch live. So stand by, folks. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, Lisa Finch. Hello,
Good afternoon.
Hello, Lisa. I'm not sure what you've done there, but you sound a bit. You okay?
Good morning.
Yeah, okay, that's better. We can hear you a bit more clearly now. If you'd just like to take this moment to introduce yourself, Lisa, and tell the audience just a little bit about yourself, who you are and why you're here, and then we'll kind of try and head on a bit.
My name is Lisa Finch. I live in Wichita, Kansas in the United States. And prior to this incident involving my son, I was attending college to get into law enforcement.
Okay, so you had an intention to be a law enforcement officer.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to talk about that a little bit later because what eventually happened to your son would have probably impacted your choice and decisions as to whether or not you would pursue that, I would imagine.
Yes,
and
definitely.
I would have also imagined that it would actually change your view on law enforcement as a whole.
Yes. Yes.
You know, it's funny how when, you know, we talk to people right across the states from different backgrounds, different nationalities, different colors, different cultures, who all came from a very respectful upbringing, whose view of one of the most significant and important institutes of our society has changed their opinions on the depth of respect that they have for what should be a privilege and an honor to serve. But we'll come to that in a few moments. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Linda. How many children do you have? How many grandchildren do you have?
I had 4 children, 2 who are now deceased. I have 7 beautiful grandchildren. I have a very loving family who have really created a border around me during this. I myself have 2 sisters who also live here. My mom and dad live in Oklahoma, not very far. And the support that I've gotten, even from strangers here, has just been such a blessing, such a blessing.
We will talk about some of that support as we go on through the show. But Jonna Chizezi made sure that she wanted me to let you know that she's listening, she's tuning in, and she is 100% supporting you on this, and she's there for you. As I know the ladies are, because I've worked with them over a period of time now, and I know the work that team of ladies do for those who are going through something that they've already been through and still going through themselves. But again, we'll talk about how that's affected you as a family and how that's affected you as an individual as we progress through the show. So what has life been like for a mother and a grandmother prior to, I mean, what was your family life like? Because it sounds like you've got a pretty big family, and it sounds like you've got a close family. So what was family life like for you prior to this devastating incident?
Oh, there was still a lot of arguing. We were not as close as we are now as a family unit. And I'm talking nieces, nephews, cousins. Just the family that's one thing my son always wanted, was just for everybody to get along. And it's bittersweet because now it's happening and he's not here to enjoy it.
Sometimes it is unfortunate that the very thing that brings us together is of such a painful nature.
Yes.
But at least his memory lives on in a certain way, in a positive and productive way.
Yes. For Thanksgiving, when we had gatherings, it was his duty to make the potato salad. That was his one demand from the rest of the family. And in honor of him, during Thanksgiving, we're going to make sure there's potato salad there.
Well, before we talk about what happened on that fateful day, let's hear some more about Andrew. What sort of a child was Andrew? I mean, you brought him into this world, so tell us some more about Andrew, the child, your son.
Well, he was 10 pounds at birth, and he was a very happy child, a very smart child. He and his brother had their differences, but they still were very close. And he always had friends, close friends. And that was from beginning at school when he started kindergarten. And he's so artistic and just a wonderful human being overall. As he got older, he was placed in the gifted program here in his school, which means he was advanced further than the other students in his class and was placed in the gifted with much harder schoolwork. He still liked to play pranks at school. I mean, it wasn't above him to pull a fire alarm, or they have these joke things that we call them stink bombs, but they're little capsules. And when you open them up, it's imagine the worst smell that you can ever smell and magnify that by 10.
Oh, we had those things in school here in the UK. It was disgustingly smelly. I remember it well.
He would put one in my car. He would put one in my bed, and he would take it to school and do the damage there. I mean, he was just a happy-go-lucky kid. Just a happy-go-lucky kid.
Sounds like he was a bit of a prankster.
Yes. Yes.
Much loved, I imagine?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Like I said, the friends, the family. I mean, he really was different on a lot of levels than anybody else I've ever known. He was so, like, there was one time he and his brother weren't speaking, but his brother had problems with someone, and he didn't even tell his brother, and he went and talked to those people, and the trouble was taken away. And his brother didn't know about this till years later. And Aunt Andy was a very private person, and he was so artistic. What he could do with a pencil and a piece of paper, I mean, there's doodles all over the place of how exact, just, he would bring a drawing to life.
I hear you. I mean, prior to us coming on here, we talked about how many children you had in general, and you said that you had 4. Tell us about your children and a role that Andrew played amongst them all.
All right. My oldest daughter passed away in 2002, 13 days past her 20th birthday due to an automobile accident. She left behind a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old who I raised. Andy took it upon himself to be how old would he have been? Well, he was still quite young. He was like 6 years, 7 years younger than she was. And he took it upon himself to be the father figure in those kids' lives. And losing a kid in any way should not happen. Should not happen.
I mean, it's again, we're going to talk about your loss, very shortly. But Andrew was a father himself, wasn't he?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, he was a loving, doting father. He loved his kids. The sad thing is, his daughter just turned 2 in March, and she's not going to have a father to walk her down the aisle. My son's not going to get to experience grandchildren. He's not going to teach his son how to be a man. And when he found out he was having a daughter, my son is the most calm, cool, and collected person you'd ever know. Never saw him raise his voice, never saw him get too riled. But when he found out he was having a daughter, he kept saying, "What am I going to do with the girl? What am I going to do with the girl? I could teach my son to be a man, but what do I do with the girl?" It was funny to see this cool, calm, collected. He was a bigger guy. He was about 6'2" and probably 250 at times. And he was just throwing his hands up in the air and just really worried about how he was going to raise his daughter. But his son is now 8, and he has very, very vivid memories of the times he spent with his son, with his dad. And at his agenda at school now, he continues to draw broken hearts. He draws broken hearts all over the place because of his dad. And his son also, if the school is having a function and the police are going to be involved, whether it be DARE, whether it be there was one incident where it was going to be a charity basketball game, he cannot go. My grandson cannot go at all.
Wow. You know, the pain is etched over every sentence that you speak. And the love. The love.
Hurts.
Yeah, the love is felt with every voice, every word that you speak. He sounds, and furthermore, he, with the photographs that I've seen, he's a very handsome man. So I'd have imagined he was a bit of a catch for the ladies too, right?
He was, but he always thought he was ugly. And he was real shy around girls. He did have the love of his life, which is Tawny Unruh, the mother of his children. He did. He loved her, but he never loved another woman like this. I don't know if he even experienced love prior to this, but he loved her so much. Oftentimes people say they get signs from ones that have passed on, and she received several signs, and he's still around us. We just can't see him or touch him.
Yeah. So in general, around the family, he was very well loved, very much loved, and very popular. What was he like as a pupil at school? What was he like in the community? Did he have many friends? Did he have a large, was he? I mean, I know you said he was very private, but did he have a good, environment of friends?
He had a good amount of friends, and he would not let anybody in unless he knew them very well. And in school, like I said, he was in gifted class. And The friends he had, a lot of people knew of him. I mean, strangers, after the funeral, strangers would come up and tell me, or people that I'd never met before, and tell me how wonderful he was and what he had done on behalf of him. I'll give you, for instance, there was one time my son was locked. It was called the Boys Ranch, and he was locked up for juvenile delinquency. And there was this other guy there who had to shop out of what they called their closet. He had nobody to provide him clothes. He had nobody to provide him hygiene. And my son had just gotten a really, really nice coat. It was around Christmas time. And he took his coat off and gave it to this other guy. That's the type of guy he was. These are the stories that I'm finding out about now. I mean, he did it because he wanted to, not for any attention or anything. You know, things like that. Just I found out so much about my son since he's passed that I'm just so proud of him. I must have done something right because he was such a decent guy.
I suppose that was the next question that I was going to ask you was, people been coming forward with these, good factor stories about stuff that Andrew had done,
yes,
and impacts that he might have had, differences that he might have made to lives along the way.
Yeah, he had at the gathering we had at my at that house that we lived in. People from his 7th grade, 8th grade classes were coming up and telling me different stories, like how one person had been bullied, and these are people that I was not aware of, but he still hung out with them at times. One of his friends was being bullied, and Andy took care of the situation, and that person was never bullied again. And he was very protective of those he did that in his life. Very protective. Very protective.
I know that you've had a very difficult few days. Donna Trezesi has also pointed out that she knows that you've had a difficult few days. Before we just go into the story proper, what has been the real cause of these difficult days that you've had this week, and how have you been able to get through them?
There's just been some stuff going on, and it started when we were deposed by their attorney, and I've been steadily going downhill since then. And it's gotten so bad that I'm probably going to have to check into a mental hospital.
If you need a couple of minutes to compose yourself, I can understand that, but
no, I'm okay.
You're okay.
I'm okay. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to try, but I'm not going to push you in that direction because I can already see that that's a difficult area for you. But just to say that, you're not alone. There are many people who are standing alongside you, supporting you, wanting to let you know that you're not on your own on this. And you can reach out right across. And I'm one of those, Lisa, by the way. We build family here. We build relationships. There is nobody that's ever been on my show that I'm not still in connection with. So we build family. We make relationships here. So I hope that you will continue to communicate with the likes of myself and Donna and Yolanda and Donna Hayes also. There's a whole team of people.
There's a nationwide full of support here in America.
Absolutely.
People who've lost family members to police miscarriage of justice.
And we also have some real prayer warriors that regularly tune in to the show, like Sandra Dawn, for example. She's an absolute prayer warrior I know, and a great gospel singer. I actually play her music on my gospel show on a Sunday morning. And she regularly tunes in, and I know that she's sending her love out to you now as we speak, and probably praying for you as we continue to engage in this show. Now, please tell us, in your own words, how did you get to find out that your son had lost his life on that fateful day?
When we had been taken down for questioning.
Who had been taken down for questioning? You had.
The three of us that were in the household, we were handcuffed. We were asked to told to come outside with our hands up.
Now I'm gonna kind of jump backwards and forwards because I just want the audience to really get an understanding of it. When you were handcuffed and brought down to the station, you may not have known it at that time, but was Andrew already dead? Had they already shot him?
They had already shot him.
So at the time they came to arrest you and bring you to the station, we got some feedback, so I don't know what you've done. You've switched something on your phone there.
Oh, all right. Sorry.
They hadn't told you he was dead yet?
No.
So,
in fact, they were denying anybody had been shot.
So they've come to your home and handcuffed you to bring you down to the train station, to the police station.
Well, prior to that, before that, they told us to come outside with our hands up. That's where they handcuffed us. And the weather was 24 degrees Fahrenheit. And we were inappropriately dressed because it was in the evening. We were all starting to chill, None of us had shoes on. My actual granddaughter had shorts on. And they would not let us get clothes. And we were left out into that weather for almost an hour. Then they said, go ahead. Tell us they were taking us, or me, they did not tell they were taking us down for questioning. They just started, I was so confused with everything that was going on. They took us down for questioning, and that's where they handcuffed. That's where I just calmly asked, what about my son? And he paused and he said, I'm sorry, your son is deceased. And the feeling, the strange, calm, hard feeling I got is not like how I reacted with my first daughter, with my first child. It was just, at that moment, I knew my life had changed forever. I don't even recognize the person I was before this. And no, my son was still alive. Well, I'm kind of going out of order. They let him lay there for like 30 minutes with no medical treatment. He was still breathing when he went to the hospital. No medical attention was given to him right away. Nothing. Then my granddaughter had to step over him. My minor aged granddaughter, had to step over her dying uncle, listening to him breathe.
I'm just going to read out a particular article and then we'll take it from there, okay?
All right.
It says, in their own words, the 10 officers and 3 deputies who surrounded Andrew Finch's home on December the 28th had different interpretations and a reaction to Finch's movements the night he was killed. Officers were sent to 1033 W. McCormick just after 6 p.m. because they received a call that there was a homicide and hostage situation inside. The person who made the report claimed to be the shooter and said he wasn't going to put his gun down according to dispatch records. The report was fake, an instance of swatting. No one was dead inside the home when the officers arrived. They didn't immediately know the call wasn't real, authorities have said. They also didn't know the caller was still talking to a 911 dispatcher 16 minutes after Finch was gunned down. The 28-year-old father of two, that's Andrew Finch, was not armed.
No.
So when they told you that your son was deceased, was no longer alive, how did they explain that to you?
They didn't. And besides, one thing I want to point out, there were a lot more officers than the ones you just named. There were many officers there on that scene. I would venture to guess more than 40 officers. You said 10 officers and the 3 sheriff's officers. My house was surrounded by officers in every direction.
Now, I want you to tell the audience, in your own words, Lisa, what sort of day was it prior to this incident taking place? What was you guys doing? What as far as you know, what was Andrew doing? Where was he? Where was he going? Tell us what was going on that day before this really fateful incident.
Andy was driving my roommate to Newton, which is about 30 miles from here, to go to court, traffic court. He came back and he spent the day around the house. He ended up cooking us dinner that evening, roast beef, which is his favorite thing to cook, and he was a good cook. And the last thing he was doing, I was in my room and he was laying on the couch, which was 2 rooms over. He was texting me. And that was that day. I mean, there was just so much. He stayed, of course he was in touch with some people, talking on his phone, playing on his phone and stuff. But he did take my roommate to Newton. He and my roommate were discussing starting a business together. And he did go to the store to get the groceries for what we were having for supper. It was just an average day.
Just an average day.
Yes. I mean, he himself had cooked dinner. He doesn't cook. He didn't cook all the time, but.
And this address that the police was called to, 1033 West McCormick or W McCormick, whatever it is. What is that address? Who lives there?
At that time, it was me, my roommate Ali Abdelhadi, my granddaughter, who was 17 at the time, and my grandson, who was 16 at the time. My grandson was not home that evening. And the officer who took me down for questioning asked me where he was at, and I took him to where he was at. And he asked, Francis is his name, asked him to go down for questioning too. He said, no, I'm not going to. He just kept demanding to know where his uncle was. Where was his uncle? Because people knew he was dead a long time before I did. I don't know how my grandson...
So was you at the house when he was shot?
Yes. Me, my roommate, and my granddaughter were.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get this picture together. So when the SWAT team arrived at your home, you were all inside the house?
Yes.
So what sent Andrew to the front door?
Okay, they never once announced that they were outside. Behind this huge house, huge, not a one-story like described, but huge older house, was an alley that had a pothole that made a noise when a car passed through it. And Andy had got up to investigate this noise because the neighborhood was not as good. And with both the minor children in the house, he was always making sure the house was going to be safe. And he got up to check the noise. He opened the door, saw all the lights and the commands and everything, stepped back in the house, and then was shot through the screen door.
I'm just going to read another excerpt. So forgive me as I go into this. And it's at this particular time when this was reported, Officer Barris, is it Barris was his name?
That's the caller.
That's the caller. Okay.
Not the officer.
Okay, so the officer was not named either, right? And we're going to talk about Barris, the caller, shortly, right?
Right.
And they talk about a 10-second window of yeah, but they talk about, I mean, you can answer that in a second, but they talk about the 10-second window because that's what they report it as. It says the officer who shot Finch, referred to as officer number 1 in the report, says that when he got to 1033 West McCormick, he was preparing for a hostage situation, so he grabbed his rifle. As he took position across the street, his attention was directed to the silhouette of a person that was visible on the second floor of the Finch home. Another officer said it looked like the person was moving up and down, possibly giving CPR to the person they thought had been shot, the report says. The officer said that when Finch opened his door, the officer was looking at him through the scope on his rifle. Several officers standing around the house began yelling commands at Finch. He throws his hands up very quickly, at ear level, the officer said. And almost as soon as he puts his hands up, he brings them back down, he said. Explaining he saw Finch reach back with his right hand to the side of his sweatshirt or jacket or whatever it is that he's wearing, actually lifts the side. He says Finch's body language and a dip of his shoulder made him think Finch was reaching for a gun. His hand starts to come up, and when I'm like, okay, he's gonna fire at officers, the officer said, I believe that I see a gun in his hand, and as that's being raised at the officers, and at that point, that's when I decide to protect those officers and their lives and safety, and I fire one round at this individual. That was the... again, you've opened up your phone and I've got an echo coming through.
Oh, okay. Where was that article? Because there's a lot of falsehoods on those statements, and I want to point that out to my attorney because, for one thing, the way the house was designed, there's no way you could have seen if anybody was doing CPR or if anybody was in the shadow of the thing. Is that in the?
That's the Wichita Eagle, and I'm going to send it to you on a link by direct message as we speak.
Okay. I didn't mean that. No. From the.
So you don't worry about it. I've sent you the link. You can have a look at it later on if you like.
Yeah.
But I've sent you the link. It's from the Wichita Eagle. And it's dated April the 13th, 2018.
Yeah, that must have come out of it. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right, so that's the officer's recollection of what he thinks was taking place as he had Andrew in his scope of his rifle with his rifle pointed towards that door. And he's claiming that Andrew made movements that suggested he was going to his hip to get what the officer assumed was going to be a gun and pull it out. But prior to that, the claim is that the officers are saying that the silhouette of the body appeared to be bending over somebody as if they were giving CPR. Does any of that ring a bell to you?
No, not at all. And it was 7 seconds. And we just had depositions of 3 of the 4 officers that were across the street. That's why I wanted to know about that information, because that contradicts what was said in the depositions.
So You're dragged out of your home. You was aware.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just rewind a bit so I can take stock. When the police came to the house and took, you obviously would have heard the shot, right? The shot that inevitably killed Andrew.
I actually didn't hear the shot. I heard my son scream.
Okay. So did and I suppose then they've come and got you to come out of the house while Andrew is still lying on the floor.
I was walking towards him, and there was a door on the east side of the house that was open. They said, "Come out with your hands up." I did not make it as far as the others. My roommate made it so far that he saw Andy himself, and he can't get that out of his mind. And I'll take this just brief moment to say this. God was with me that night because I didn't get to go to my son. Of course, now I wished I would have went and cradled him. If I had made it so far as to see my son in that situation, I would have lost my mind. I would have flipped out and went after the first person I saw, and more than likely would have been shot myself. It was a nightmare. I'm not saying that in any way affects the impact of that night, but that would have been, it could have been worse. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
No, you're making absolute sense.
If I would have saw that, I know what I would have done.
Yeah,
I know exactly what I would have done. So just take a step back.
Here's a question for you before we press into looking at Tyler Barris. The fact that it was done by a hoax 911 call in what we now know to be a SWAT call, does that take away any responsibility or from the police, from the way that they acted? Do you understand what I mean?
Yes. No, it does not. Not one single bit. Not one single bit. And I found out recently that Wichita had another SWAT call about 1.5 2 years ago. And that just came to light to my knowledge. Nobody was killed in that one.
Okay. Because it's quite clear that Tyler Barris was trying to create some sort of chaotic drama. Now, did Tyler Barris know Andrew, or did Andrew know Tyler Barris? Was there any association whatsoever?
No, I'm going to say his name one time, and then I'm going to refer to him as a caller.
Okay.
Tyler Barris was in Los Angeles, and this was over a $1.50 bet on the Call of Duty World War II game. He was paid to do this.
Wow. Elaborate for me what you mean by he was paid and it was a Call of Duty and it was a bet. What do you mean by it was a bet? A bet by who?
It was a bet between two gamers against each other, and one of those being from Wichita, who actually is the one that gave out our address.
Wow. These are things that we here in the UK can't comprehend. Again, your phone's just gone to echo. I'm not sure what you're doing with it, Lisa.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yeah. We can't we don't get this kind of thing here, and furthermore, we don't even get the news bulletins of when these types of deaths occur. So it's very difficult for us to comprehend how the police can get it so wrong. But let's talk about the call, and what that represented. It says here, Tyler Barris was arrested Friday after allegedly calling a 911 dispatcher and posing as a Wichita man, claiming he had shot his father in the head and was holding the rest of his family in a closet at gunpoint. NPR reports. The police surrounded the Wichita address given by the caller and fatally shot the 28-year-old dad, Andrew Finch, who emerged from the front door. The police have actually acknowledged in that interview that Andrew Finch was an innocent victim and that the incident is believed to be a case of swatting. And we'll talk about that scenario, swatting, shortly. So how did I would have imagined, that the police have got this. My confusion here, and I suppose everybody listening and an audience, please bear with me because this appears to be conflicting and confusing at times. The caller was still on the call on the phone to the dispatcher up to 16 minutes after Andrew was killed. So at what point did they not know that the person that they were shooting at was not the caller?
In the first place, the call did not go to dispatch. It went into the security desk at City Hall, which they're trying to figure out how that happened. He also disconnected several times and called back. Then it was transferred to dispatch. And there was somebody there. It can be heard from somebody call in doing the calls. How they relayed the information, what was getting through. I mean, I could just go off on a tangent. So you're going to have to tell me what you want to know next.
This is your show. This is your platform. You tell it like you want to, Lisa.
Well, all right. There was no hostage negotiators there. There was no people trained to deal with the mentally ill. There was no ambulance. I mean, no, they didn't. It just comes down to they didn't follow training or proper procedure at all.
So, in your opinion, there's quite a lot of things that they could have done differently.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So, you say that there was no hostage negotiator. So, they've been informed that this is a hostage situation with one already dead.
Mm-hmm.
That's how the report reads to me. One already dead, and the person who made the report claimed to be the shooter and said he wasn't going to put down his gun. Right? That was one of the other things that was said by the caller, and that was also recorded and reported in the Wichita Eagle, in the article that I've sent you. So, when they arrived, I would have imagined that nothing that was being described by the caller was actually taking place.
Nothing.
And yet no one made an attempt to find out what was actually going on.
No. How did they not know my son was a hostage? Where was the phone if he was the caller?
These are very important questions, Lisa, because, again, it seems like there was no control over the incident when the swatting team arrived, which, to me, doesn't make sense because they normally come in a very controlled and organized manner with somebody who is controlling the whole operation, directing and dictating where people should go and what they should do. And at that point, nobody made an attempt to get Andrew to identify who he was.
No.
So
that's what I'm saying. No police protocol, no police training, nothing. It was like it was done by a bunch of amateurs. I would even say they were police officers.
So Andrew comes to the door. You guys were sat down eating dinner. Did anybody in the
Well-
house hear the shot?
My granddaughter and my roommate. We were all in different rooms. We weren't sitting down eating dinner. Eddie had made dinner that night.
Right. They also didn't know I can't understand why they wouldn't know that the caller was still talking to a 911 dispatcher. I'm trying to work out, have you guys been able to get any answers as to who was in control of the operation, and were they in communication with the dispatch who originally sent them out, who said that they were speaking to the caller?
I have, because of the depositions, I'm more aware of a lot of things. But I'm not under a gag order, but I really shouldn't talk about what was said in the depositions because my lawyer wouldn't like it. I do have an excellent lawyer out of Chicago, Illinois, who is managing partner of a nationwide law firm that only deals with these kind of situations, murdering cops. So that's another blessing.
Because the officer who fired the fatal shot says that he had Andrew in his scope, which means that he was watching him as he came to the door. One, you've already confirmed that there was no phone, so he couldn't have been the caller. And B, they've already confirmed that he had no weapon, so the officer couldn't have seen the gun. So my question has to be, what was it that the officer saw through the scope that's meant to be specific, accurate, and the one tool and resource that he has in order to be able to make a decision from a distance that could justify a kill?
The bullet went through the screen door. How could he have seen anything? Because this happened within 7 seconds. Not even 10.
So it appears that the officer panicked, thinking that the person who was the caller was retreating back inside the house. But for me, I'm still struggling to understand how he could have perceived Andrew to be the caller, even with the scope that he was looking through, and even with the short space of time that was given to him, whether it be 7 seconds or the 10 seconds that the police are trying to say he had, right? Because what he says was, in that, has anybody tried to reenact what this officer said that Andrew was doing, i.e., he's come to the door, he's raised his hands, he's put his hands down, he's gone and lifted up the side of his sweatshirt or whatever it was that he had. He looked like he was reaching for a gun, and then he pulled this thing out and it looked like he was about to point it at the officers. Because I'd like to know how long that this scenario would take, and whether or not it would fit into the 7 to 10 seconds that this officer is claiming that he was looking through that scope before he made that fatal shot that was to kill your son, Andrew Finch. Is there anything that you can tell us about that particular scenario that can shed any light on it?
No, I haven't. I don't know if they have, which I very seriously doubt it, because they really believe that they are in the right. But
because unless he's Billy the Kid or John Wayne or Clint Eastwood, the fastest gun in the West, I can't see how he would have done all these things so quickly, in such a detailed way, that this officer can turn around and describe all of these actions that justified the kill. Because even in a gun shootout, it would take a little bit longer than this time that this guy is explaining for the actions that he's trying to explain that Andrew Finch carried out, that gave him a clear and precise indication that Andrew Finch was about to bring harm or death to his colleagues and officers?
He was a sniper. Justin Rapp is his name, is the police officer's name. Somebody had given it to one of the activists who runs the Daily Haze anonymously. And he had posted it several times. But the police department would not release the name of the officer because that's what they do here. It wasn't released until Tyler Barris had his court or hearing and Rapp came forth. That's when they finally announced it. Then at Tyler Barris's court, Rapp said he did not see a gun.
He says he did not. Well, there are two different statements that he gives, and I've seen the one where he actually says in court that he didn't see any gun. So if he's actually testified in court that he didn't see any gun, what then gave him the authority to fire a fateful shot? Because as far as I'm aware, we've had this conversation with friends that we've had on the show who are ex-officers or ex-chiefs of police, etc. The law states, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that an officer is not allowed to offload his weapon unless there is clear and imminent danger. Right?
No, he didn't follow the law.
So
That's what I said, none of them did. And he wasn't given an order either. Nobody ordered him to fire.
And normally that would be a case in a SWAT situation, right, where there's hostages at stake. Somebody would have to calculate the severity of those decisions and the impact it would have. Because if it was a hostage situation, there's no telling whether there's one or two assailants. There was no telling whether Andrew was a victim or the caller. None of this had been clarified in the short space of time that the officers arrived on scene. None of this had been clarified. So none of them had an awareness of what was actually going on, because they hadn't yet made contact. The caller was still on dispatch, and they could have clarified all of this in milliseconds if this was under control. So it's not just the officer that's at fault here. It's whoever was in control of the whole operation, the sergeant, the head man. There are some serious questions to answer. So what do we know about Tyler Barris, the caller?
He's in Los Angeles, or he was in Los Angeles, and he's been doing things. He called the FBI in Washington, D.C., and threatened them with a bomb. I mean, he's done so many different things. And in this note, SWAT was not at my house that night. There was no SWAT member at all. But Tyler Barris he's a sick man. He's a sick man for the things he's doing. I don't know if you're aware of this, but he's pled guilty to 46 new indictments. But they're trying to roll all three of his federal cases into one here in Kansas. So we'll see what happens. But he's pled guilty, and I'm not sure what's happening to the two gamers yet.
So prior to Andrew losing his life that day and the way that he lost his life, how did you get to find out that the police had turned up, the law enforcement had turned up at your home because of a prank call? When did you find out, and how did you find out?
I didn't find out until a few days later. And I can't remember who told me, but it happened. But I was told a few days later what had actually transpired to make this happen. And that's what I'm saying. The law enforcement there that night showed no training, they showed no intelligence whatsoever on any level that night. On any level. I mean, why withhold medical treatment from a man who's been shot? And besides, the father was supposedly had been shot in the head dead. Why wasn't there already an ambulance on the scene?
The bottom line is they were told that one person was already shot or presumed dead, and others were being held hostage. And by the time they was arrived, if this was a real live scene taking place, they would have had no understanding if there was any other injuries and how severe those injuries would have been. They had no idea of who the person that they were, who the assailant was, who the culprit was, and what state of mind that they were in, and how best to approach. I'm not sure how things work over your side, but has there ever been an explanation as to how they prepared to confront this situation that they felt that they were going into, which was a hostage situation with already one down?
No.
Is that anything that you've tried to investigate and find out at all? Can you?
Well, like I said, I'm letting my lawyer do what he needs to do, because at some point this takes a great toll on me, and I have to take a step back.
Yeah.
And
I get
that. But I'm sure I'm going to make sure my lawyer listens to this interview, because you've even brought up some more questions I have, and I really appreciate that.
Sometimes it's always just good to look from things from a different perspective.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I'm glad that I could be of some assistance, however small that might be. So, if
this is another blessing, if I have to count my blessings.
Amen, Lisa. I've said often enough. It's amazing how many God-fearing people that I've had on this show over the last 4 years, which tells me this is such a wicked attack on God-fearing people by the most wickedest of those that are in our society. And the enemy is having a field day, taking all our attention from the things that we should be doing in serving God to fighting these battles. Now, looking at the approach that the police had to what was potentially a hostage situation with one already down. In their questioning of you when they first took you away from the house, did they try to give any description of any information that they received that could have given an understanding as to why they felt the need to fire so soon without trying to investigate what the state of play was inside the house?
Not when they took us down for questioning, and nothing directly to me. Nothing. They've got the DA's report, which I'm not able to read, but I'm listening to other people who are really helping me with this, because I've not been able to watch the video footage, and I've not been able to read the DA's final report. But I will say that there was one officer located across the street who said Andy had a confused look on his face.
I would have a confused look on my face if I opened my door and saw bright lights shining from all various different sorts of police vehicles towards my house. I'd have a confused look on my face, especially if there was nothing going on inside.
The lights didn't come on until after he opened the door.
Wow.
And he was being given commands from several different directions. Plus, yes, they blocked off the McCormick down to the east of us, but there was a major intersection with a lot of traffic flowing. I mean, how was he supposed to hear and understand in the first place? They're saying he didn't follow orders.
So if they
You know?
if they thought that Andrew Finch was the assailant, was the caller, who had already shot one and was holding everybody hostage, once they had shot him and he was down on the ground, why did they need to arrest you guys in such a way? Why did they need to approach you guys as if you were potential victims? Because surely the call that they got was there was a man in the house with a gun, he'd killed one and he was holding the rest of the family hostage. So the family were victims. They were supposed to be rescuing you.
Mm-hmm.
But this
and they ransacked my house until 6 o'clock the next morning with two separate search warrants, and kept me and my roommate hostage at gunpoint in my bedroom. They first told us we all had to find a different place to stay, and I refused because of my medications.
Yeah.
Then they went and got my roommate, where they dropped him off and brought him there because I could have possibly been suicidal, which I haven't been through all of this. But we were kept at gunpoint in my bedroom while they were searching my house. And I'll go ahead and say this. I am so surprised they did not plant something. I am so surprised. They confiscated my computer, our cell phones, our gaming system, which they ruined my computer. I don't have a computer right now. We didn't trust the phones. We didn't trust the gaming system, so we had to throw that all away. I don't know.
Officer 2 says this. He describes having a full view of Finch and describes him as being startled by our presence before making a sudden movement or jerking movement after officers started shouting commands. Officer 2, according to video, is standing next to the officer who shot Finch. He said he did not fire because he did not see a firearm in Mr. Finch's hands.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So you've got two officers standing next to each other with the same view, but they both give two different observations of what they saw.
Mm-hmm. And there were other officers that said they didn't see a gun. There were officers much closer to Andy who did not fire because they did not see a gun. They're saying it was because they would have been caught in the crossfire because there were some on the east, some on the west. And it'll work itself out. And I have a firm belief that this will end on our side. Faith, I guess, faith-based. Because that's why I can't say a whole lot, because I could possibly say or do something that would jeopardize the case. Yeah.
Wow. Officer number 4 says that Finch's body language was like he was just not interested in dealing with the police on this day or this night. He said Finch reached down with both hands and actually pulled up his pants. And I can remember thinking, that's not a good idea. Don't be tugging at your waistband. He said, given the circumstances of the call and Finch's body language, he thought he was the person who reportedly shot his dad. Then thought Finch was pulling out a gun, but said he didn't shoot because he didn't see a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these officers did not have their body cams turned on either.
No. But one of them supposedly had it on the entire time. Yeah. One of the ones from across the street.
Yeah, I've got a 30-second video from one, and I've got a 15-second video from another, and I've got a 40-second video, but I think this is after This is after the shot. I've got a view from the officer on the west side of the house, 19 seconds. And another one of 27 seconds. They're all saying...
Do any of them... Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
All of them are saying that they see Finch's hands go down. And I'm now looking directly at... Because your house, I would imagine, has a big porch. It's a two-story, and then there's a loft conversion, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's like 3 stories.
No, the top part is the attic.
Right. Okay. But well, you call that 3 stories over here because it's a.
Oh, okay.
It's a loft conversion. That's a room up there I can see, right? And then you
Not to my knowledge.
Well, it's got windows.
But there's no way to get up there except it's real small.
Oh, okay. And there's a police car parked to the side of your house by the front door where the steps are.
Mm-hmm.
The officer who fired the shot was across the road facing the front door, right?
Almost a half a football field away.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I'm trying to get a real understanding of what they thought they saw.
Did you watch any of the videos?
Yeah, it's...
is there any way that you would have interpreted it as him reaching for a gun?
No.
Well, no, you did not answer that, so... no. So...
There is no movement that he makes in any of the videos that I've seen that would suggest to me that he was reaching for a gun. Some of these officers are piped up, they're hyped up, they prepare themselves for battle, they're militarized, and I would imagine, if the truth be said, which they probably won't tell the truth, is that they were hyped up and set for a hostage shootout situation and had no other option in their mind when they arrived. So everything and anything was going to look. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
They were going to interpret every movement as an aggressive movement. That's my point.
Yes, but if the video shows otherwise, I mean, no.
The video is the evidence that they didn't see what they said they saw. So for me, what I'm saying is the police have lied. They have clearly lied.
They've lied under oath.
Right? What they're saying that they have seen is not visible in any of these videos. And I'm going to, just in case anybody else wants to review those videos, I'm going to post them in the comment section of the live feed, so that people can actually view it for themselves, if that makes any sense.
Oh yes, to me, yes. I thought you were talking to the audience, but yeah.
No, yes. So, Sandra Dawn says that it shows a lack of training. But I guess if it shows a lack of training, has the question been asked as to what sort of experience these particular officers who turned up at your home had prior to this incident?
Well, like I said, it's come to my knowledge that there was a swatting incident a year and a half, couple of years ago. All right. I mean,
were these the same officers that were involved in that?
I'm not sure.
So my question still remains that
even one of them being aware should be caused to be better trained for this kind of thing.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is, if we could have an understanding as to what sort of experience these officers had in dealing with this type of a situation, we could probably get a better understanding. Because again, we've said this often enough. And here's the thing, right, Lisa? And I'm not going to try and minimize what took place in any way, shape or form. Because this has always been my problem when we're dealing with an unlawful killing, killed by cops, and all of these issues that we're dealing with. I understand that we're human and we can make mistakes. And if the police was just to say, you know what, I thought that this guy was reaching for a gun, I fired, but it turns out that he wasn't and we were wrong. It wouldn't bring Andrew's life back, right? But at least it would give you some comfort that he didn't do anything wrong. But what really concerns me, what really annoys me, what really aggravates me deeply is that on top of their mistake, they still try to make out that the victim was the one that was at fault and not them.
Yes.
And that's what's so hurtful, because instead of you being able to grieve for the loss of your son, you're having to fight the injustice of his death. Reliving each moment, day after day after day. Not being able to put it to bed. And that, to me, is the biggest crime of all.
The shooter has no remorse whatsoever. No remorse.
Absolutely. And the point being is, if they would just take responsibility for making mistakes, as we all have to in our place of work or even in our home with our children, we have to take responsibility for our mistakes.
What if a citizen accidentally kills somebody? Whether it's unknowingly kills somebody, let's say that. That's not a danger or anything. What happens to that person? They're not let off with oh, you did nothing wrong.
And that's the biggest travesty of this, is that there is still no, redress for someone who makes such a. We're not talking about you paid the wrong amount into somebody's bank account, or you gave them the wrong goods when they came to the shop, or you put the wrong fuel in the fuel tank. You took someone's life.
Yes.
You killed somebody. You killed somebody's son, somebody's husband, somebody's father. You killed somebody. And you haven't got the decency to say, I made a mistake. Instead, you've got the family trying to prove that their loved one didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
How does that leave you feeling, Lisa?
Well, hardened, determined to make sure my son gets justice. I feel horrible because they won't even admit it. Not one member of the city's government has come forward and apologized, except for the police chief. Is that
because of that thin blue line, that wall of silence?
Well, that's kind of odd, because 3 days later, there was a black officer that fired a gun into a room of children, trying to kill a dog that he responded to. A bullet fragment, it didn't hit anything except the cement floor. A bullet fragment grazed the side of a white child's head. They threw this officer under the bus. Wow. They fired that officer, charging him with knowingly and willingly putting a person in position where harm, great bodily disfigurement, or even death could occur. That's what they're charging him with. This brings me back to the question. The house is supposedly doused in gasoline. My house.
Yeah.
So why fire a live round into a house that is doused in gasoline?
Now, we never touched on that. Yeah. So part of what the caller said he had done was he had doused the house in gasoline, right?
Yes.
And he was, so why would you fire a live round where a spark could ignite that gasoline, killing everybody inside?
Because that put each and every one of the people in my house in the exact same position they are charging this black officer with.
Absolutely. So, are you aware of what, if any, brief these officers were given prior to arriving at your location?
No.
Because that needs to be understood. They need to answer. These are the questions that they need to answer.
Yes. I do know in the lawsuit my lawyer filed on the, I think it was page 15, one of the pages, in the first 2 weeks of him taking the case, and this is right after the New Year's, and right before he filed, so he worked on this and found this out pretty fast. There is a list of 7 illegal behaviors conducted by WPD, Wichita Police Department. One, which is shredding documents relating to domestic violence and higher up officials. That's just one of the illegal behaviors.
Well, let's talk about how Andrew's death has affected you guys as a family. Let's start with his children. How's his children been affected by his loss?
His son goes around drawing broken hearts everywhere. He says, I miss my daddy. I miss my daddy. And at the funeral, I'm going to start crying. At the funeral, his son couldn't even walk halfway down to look at the casket. He turned around screaming, running off and screaming. And then when he came over to my house one time, I have a big, huge frame picture of Andy and then a little wooden plaque where somebody had fixed with pictures of Andy and family. My grandson picked that up and just started crying, and it broke my heart. I mean, it's affected all of us. I mean, like I said, his daughter just turned 2 in March. So she's not as fully connected with her dad as his son. And the rest of the family, I mean, no, we never know when we're going to break down. Even the ones that have returned back to work, I mean, we never know when the grief is going to manifest itself in so much that it has to come out. And I'm sure, I'm not saying our situation is any different than anybody else in this situation. No, our case is not the worst one out there. You know, I have so much sympathy for everybody going through this. Everybody, whether I'm friends with them, whether I know about them, anything. I mean, no. And the thing is, there is no one to help navigate this situation because each situation is different. And I find it really, really hard. It's just, I don't know. It's just difficult. And it's breaking me down. But I can't let it because, I mean, I have to fight for my son. Yeah. My lawyer doesn't want me saying or doing anything like on social media. I want to speak at city council again, but I'm not allowed to. So I'm finding ulterior ways to be active that will not put me in direct
conflict
place. Yeah.
You are very brave. And it's quite clear just how emotional you still get, because this is still very raw with you. I think those of us who have not been through what people like yourselves have gone through with the callous way that your loved ones have been taken from you, it's hard for us to comprehend just how deep and painful this hurt is.
No, there's no way. There's no way. There's actually another murder cop case here in Kansas, actually three of them that I'm aware of, three other ones. And they're the one I'm talking about in particular, husband was shot in broad daylight for no reason whatsoever at close range. And that's another story that you may want to be interested in. I'll ask her. But
absolutely.
I mean, it's just, and it's nationwide. Like I said, everywhere the law enforcement's acting without being trained or not. They've been given a license to do whatever they want, which isn't the right thing. You know, WPD, lack of training. All right, this man supposedly was suicidal. Where was the mental health training?
You know, we've had a big purge on mental health deaths caused by gun-happy, trigger-happy cops. And the last few weeks in particular, majority of the shows that I've covered have had a mental health-related connection. Last week was an exception. They tried to claim there was, but there was absolutely no evidence was found whatsoever of any mental health related issue. Or I think that was Tyler Rushin we did last week. I interviewed Scott Rushin, but with David Phillips and Stephanie Babb and these people that I've interviewed, they were all dealing with loved ones who had mental health related issues, who were met with a violent end of their life instead of the help that they desperately needed. The one thing that we can say is that there was no history of mental health with Andrew, and Andrew had no connections to the police, no record, no police records.
Yes, he did.
He did? Okay.
Yes. And that's another thing. We're kind of wondering if the shooter knew Andy from before, but it'll all eventually come out. It'll come out.
Whether our children are angels or not, they still deserve to die with dignity in the right way.
Yes, they don't deserve to be murdered, especially by law enforcement.
The fact that law enforcement, the fact that the captain or the sergeant, whoever he is, and I can't remember what his title was, the police chief or whatever, sergeant has said that Andrew was an innocent victim. It's quite clear that a mistake has been made. My only question is, when will they accept that the mistake was theirs?
I don't think they ever will, even if we win at the end. I don't think they're ever going to say, this was their fault. This was their fault.
So whose fault was it?
The shooter thinks it was my son's fault.
How could it be? You see, here's the thing for me. Just as the police like to use things like I was in fear of my life, qualified immunity, which means that they didn't actually breach any human rights that they knew about at the time. They felt that there was a clear and imminent danger. All of these things. But at the same time, what you have as a family, what your son has in his defense for the tragic loss of his life, is that there was nothing untoward going on at your location, at your home. There was no drugs taking place. There was no gang banging going on. There was nothing malicious taking place. You guys were just a family having a meal. He heard a noise in the alleyway, and the last thing that he expected to be confronted by when he opened his front door to investigate what was going on in the alleyway was shouting and screaming of somebody telling him to put his hands up and whatever. And blinded by lights and whatever else, he probably wouldn't have been able to make sense or see clearly who it was that was shouting those instructions at him. It would have taken him a moment or so, or even a bit longer, to compose himself and get an understanding of exactly what was going on outside in order for him to be able to comply appropriately. And they've actually given no credence to that information. They've actually given no acceptance that your son coming out the way that he did, once they've got all the information, once they've done the investigation, once they've spoken to you and everybody in the house, once they've acknowledged that this was all a hoax call, and they now know that Tyler Barris was the one who made the hoax call, once they've got an understanding of all the wrongs that was done that got them to this place in the first place, surely they can acknowledge and accept that Andrew Finch's responses, whatever they were natural.
Yes.
They were natural for somebody who was not in the pursuit of a criminal activity, who was not expecting to be confronted by bright lights and instructing, shouting police officers holding firearms, rifles, guns and whatever in his direction. And bearing in mind, when you look at the diagram and see the whole distance of where these officers were who were shouting their instructions at him, he probably couldn't hear it that clearly either.
No, not with. They were coming from multiple directions, and like I said, the traffic going by through this big major intersection, they didn't block off where the stoplight was. I mean, like there's a convenience store across the street, there's a laundromat across the street. They did not block that off, so there was traffic noise to deal with as well.
There was about 122 feet between the officer that was firing and Andrew at the front door. 122, and there was 47 feet between the officer to the east.
They were close. I mean, they could have a clear view. And I believe there was one really close to the bottom of the front steps. Off to the right, kind of off to the right before you get to the railing.
The diagram that I'm looking at shows 2 police cars to the west. It shows the officers to the east. It shows the shooters in an alleyway, more or less an alleyway directly opposite your front door. And then there was an officer to the east, but just by the front door, it looks like.
And shouldn't have he had clear.
And that's right across an intersection, right?
Yes. Yes.
So is that a busy throughway? Do you get a lot of traffic going through that area?
Yes. That's what I keep saying. They didn't block off this main intersection, and then there was the traffic noise that would have prevented him hearing clearly in the first place. They didn't block off that. No, there was the laundromat across the street, the convenience station across the street.
Wow.
And that was the time of evening where everybody would have been getting off of work and doing whatever errands they had. So
Officer 6 says that he can be heard yelling hands, hands, hands at Finch before a shot is fired. Officer 5 was standing west of the house. He's the only officer in the report quoted to say he didn't know who Finch was. I couldn't tell you if that was the suspect of the alleged shooting or if it was someone coming out asking for help, he said. When asked if he saw Finch make any movements, he said, "Not that I can see." No, that was Officer 5. At least two or three of the officers are saying that they didn't think that he made any movements.
Even one across the street with the shooter said it just looked like Andy was opening the door to try to get back in the house.
Yes, one of them did say that it looked like he was trying to retreat back into the house. But then why would you fire a shot without first identifying whether that he was a victim or the culprit?
I don't have the answers. I hope eventually I get them.
Look, for me, I'm really struggling to see how on earth they can justify what they did and how they did it. But for you as a family, you guys have got a lot of things to be looking into and a lot of questions that need to be answered. But the pain of the loss of a loved one in this absolutely tragic way is only too much to understand. How has this left you? We talked about how it impacted the children. How has this left you?
Empty. I have some very terrible thoughts that I beg God's forgiveness for every day. And especially as a parent that has already lost one. My second son is getting ready to go to Uganda on a missions trip. And I'm already worried because, of course, there was a missionary from Indiana that went over there to Cameroon and got shot through the head. But I know if something does happen to my son over there, that would be, to his thinking, the best possible thing because he would be in heaven. But no, I mean, you just worry about all your other kids. I worry about my family, and I want to say this right now. My condolences and sympathies and prayers go out to each and every family or friend of somebody that has experienced death or the loss of a loved one by a cop. I mean, no, there's no way to even describe exactly what it does to you. You cannot. It's unimaginable. Sometimes I wonder if it's really happened or if Andy's just on a trip or something, but then reality hits again. And
when we are talking about potentially over 1,000 individually killed by cops each year since they started taking these figures back into around about 2013, whenever that was, is it not about time that they started looking at the way that police responded to situations when so much of a percentage of those that they are killing nowadays are innocent, unarmed victims?
You would think so. But with our current political state, I mean, our supposed leader telling law enforcement, well, be a little rougher on your criminal.
How did you receive that comment when you heard that was the statement that he was making? How did that make you feel?
Well, I wanted to be a little rougher with him. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yes.
You're a much more courageous woman than you give yourself credit for, Lisa Finch. Now, you continue to fight for justice for Andrew.
Yes.
And what is that looking like for you now? What is your path forward? What is the avenues that you're pursuing, and how is that going?
Well, I am fighting for justice. There's something coming up that is going to happen, but like I said, nothing's going to be able to be tied back to me because of me being the figurehead of this case. I have to behave myself. And I'm not allowed, I have another speech ready to go forward at City Council, but my lawyer doesn't think it's a good idea, so I'm not.
Well, you're not going to give the you're not going to give the speech.
No. But that doesn't mean somebody else won't.
Okay. So, what does the pursuit of justice for Andrew Finch? What does that look like in practice?
Like I stated, I have Andrew Stroth, a civil rights attorney who is the managing partner of a nationwide law firm, taking this case. And the only cases that his law firm deals with is murdering killer cops. And I'm going to let him do as much as he has this in the bag. He has this in a bag, and if you're ever interested in knowing him, Google him, because I mean he was another blessing to us. Amen. Because I'd actually signed with a local lawyer, and come to find out this local lawyer settles for as low as possible and takes kickbacks from the city. I can't prove any of this. That may be allegedly, but that's just what I know.
So, what can people do to help if they want to come on board and support justice for Andrew Finch?
I mean, whatever they feel they want to do, and if not my case, any family member who's seeking justice. I mean, I know Donna's having a really rough time, trying to find justice for her son. Mm. I mean, just help anybody that's been a victim of police violence or brutality or killing. I call it murder because that's basically what it is.
That is what it is, Lisa. It's murder.
Yes, it is.
And had we carried out that act, it would be murder in the first degree.
Oh, yeah.
Because for me, those officers turned up at your home with killing on their mind.
Mm-hmm. What if we were in the same situation? What if we killed somebody who we thought was armed and getting ready to shoot us, and it was a cell phone, say, or they were not carrying anything? I mean, what would our consequences be?
What if Andrew Finch came out on his doorstep and he had a firearm and he thought that these were intruders about to break into his home or cause his family harm, and he looked across the window, he looked across the road, saw somebody raise a gun and shot him first? Do you think Andrew would have been dealt with as leniently as this officer who killed him?
Oh, no way.
Even though after they found out that it was a hoax call and Andrew was not the assailant, Andrew was not doing anything illegal, and they were able to confirm that the family hadn't been held hostage and nobody had been harmed, the fact that he had shot an officer, do you think that there would have been any understanding or any compassion for him not realizing it was an officer he was shooting at?
No, and that could have been a very case scenario. Like I said, they never once announced themselves prior to the shooting. They're saying that they did afterwards, but I don't recall. So nothing over a loud bullhorn, and their lights weren't even flashing when they got there. It was dark, and I didn't have a porch light.
A lot of mistakes was made that night, Lisa, and all of those mistakes led to the death of your beloved son, Andrew Finch. Yes. And until we can get the police to take responsibility for their mistakes, their actions, and their wrongdoing, until we can get them to start saying, hey, we messed up here, and give families an opportunity to grieve rather than fight for justice, it looks like I'm going to be in this business doing this show for a lot longer.
Yes. And that's sad. That's very sad.
I want to leave you with an opportunity to give the audience and anyone that will listen in the future your last thoughts before we end up closing the show, and make sure that there's nothing that we've left out.
No, just anybody that's listening from wherever you are, well, probably most in the United States, because I'm not aware of laws in other countries. Start petitions to get rid of that immunity clause for the police.
It's called qualified immunity.
Yes. Start petitions. Get rid of that the very first thing. If you know somebody that is in this situation, offer them as much support as you can. It could be as simple as taking groceries to them or cooking them a meal, because there's times when you can't get out of bed. There's times you cannot do what you're supposed to do. And pray for all the families and the victims of people like this. That's the most. If anybody wants to particularly reach out to me, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I'm not asking people to, but I don't. Just if you know anybody in this sort of situation, just check on them and see how they're doing, if nothing else.
Lisa Finch, you are truly a remarkable woman.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Courageous, brave, compassionate, and understanding. And most importantly, you're very selfless, because this just hasn't been just about you and your grief. Because in the midst of all of this, you've still taken the time to show concern for others. So I applaud you and take my hat off to you. I want to thank you for trusting us with your story, trusting us with your son's fight for justice, trusting us to represent you and your family on what is an absolutely traumatic and tragic experience. I want to thank you for trusting us.
No, thank you for putting the attention into this.
It's been a pleasure having you on the show. And what I look forward to doing, Lisa, is doing the update whenever you're free to then speak on all the other things that you weren't able to speak about today.
Oh, that might be a couple of years.
Well, with the rate that they're killing, I think I'm still going to be here, unfortunately.
Okay. Yes, right. Unfortunately. All right. Thank you so much.
God bless, Lisa. God be with you. God stay with you. May he protect you. May he keep you and your family. May his face shine upon you. May you know his grace and favor, his comfort and his peace in all that you do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Imperial Lounge presents an icon.
Reggae dancehall by the beach. To be held at Imperial Lounge, 2 to 14 High Street, Margate Seafront, Kent, CT9 180. To be held on the first Saturday of each month. Your host DJ Matt. Also rotated DJs, Roddy Boone, DJ Happy,
and Younger General.
Doors open 8 p.m. till late. Free entry all night. Music policy, reggae, dancehall, and a touch of soul. On the first Saturday of each month.
Reggae dancehall by the beach.
At the Imperial Lounge Margate. Do remember, you can also get VIP and Shisha booking. More info on the World Jam Global website. That's www.worldjamglobal.com. Also www.imperialloungemargate.co.uk.
See there?
Use them, it's the right thing you doing. Rebellious like
07931 152 448 or check out our website on www.ktrrecords.com. We have been in business since 2004 and also undertake community projects. So for your remixes, duplets and all your sound editing needs, why not contact KTR Records, official sponsor of World Jam Global Radio. KTR Records, coming your way.
Do you like music like this?
Great music all the time.
Or like this?
The music you love.
Maybe this.
Great music that makes you want to turn up the volume loud.
Or life track like this.
Especially where human life is concerned. Surely, sooner or later, people will realize that lives actually matter.
Then you're in the right place. Keep it locked to World Jam Global, where music is harmony.
Music 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah, you're my World Jam. Hotter than them.
See live schedule.
You see, it's here. You see. New feature coming from World Jam Global Radio in 2018. World Jam Global Top 10. To vote for your favorite artist, go to twitter.com/World Jam Global or facebook.com/World Jam Global. So pick the right track where you want to have in your car, at your house, a rock. At them.
Well, it was another heart-wrenching story from Lisa Finch. We want to thank her. Thank her for trusting us to share the story on our World Jam Global Radio Issues Today.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Next week, we're going in deep behind the walls of a penitentiary, speaking to a father serving time, but who's not here to talk about his own issues. Who's here to talk about his son killed by cops.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
To protect his anonymity, I will not disclose who it is just yet.
Back in the day, I didn't really care about
because we are going across enemy lines. Next Saturday, join me 6 o'clock. British Mean Time. I believe stateside your clocks go back tonight.
Man, I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands.
So we're back to the normal times.
Swimming
when there's a 5-hour gap.
All over the street. I was getting money. Life was so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged. I'm a changed man. Don't need no gun in my hand. It ain't about being no gangster. Life is too short to spend it all in jail. Trying to cope with this living hell. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
In the meantime, I want to thank everybody that's joined us here live on World Jam Global Radio Issues Today. My name is Kervin Julian.
Already did my time. I paid for
and we were covering the story of us, Andrew Finch.
I was a drug dealer, sold more drugs than Superfly, but I never got high on my own supply. I'm not proud of what I had to do.
Live stream is still available all over Facebook.
I had to repent, I must admit, I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now I'll sit back and think it over since I've gotten older. The life I used to live, I wouldn't do it again. I was young and dumb, my brain was so numb. I was a real Forrest Gump, but I was nobody's chump. Me and Billy the Kid had a lot in common. I was the real Terminator, much meaner than Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'd chew you up and spit you out like a real alligator.
As for me, I'm out of here. It's been a real blessing having you as an audience. Thank you for keeping me company. Sandra Dawn, Donna Chizese, Anne-Marie Grant, Stephanie Babb.
Already did my time, paid for my crime. Already did my time.
Julie Cross, Jerry Summers,
paid for my crime. Already
John Eros.
Pay for my crime, pay for my crime, pay for my crime, pay for my crime. Already did my time, I paid for my crime. Already did my time, I paid for my crime. I'm trying to get this felony off my back so I can get my life on track and have the right to vote and live like an ordinary citizen again. This is my message to all of my friends in the pen, statewide, worldwide. There was not a man I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands.